What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats, as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 2. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to one of my favorite guns in the entire game. This is the Lachmann Sub, also known as the MP5. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and we have a lot of different damage drop-offs with this gun. Essentially, with torso shots, it's going to be a 3 to 7 shot kill, depending on the range. And up close and personal, you do have to hit at least 2 of those shots to the torso, and the third one can hit anywhere else in the body, and you'll still maintain a 3-shot kill potential. As for headshots, previously we could get a 2-shot kill to the head, but unfortunately they have patched that, and now it does take you 3 shots to kill up close. And as a result, just in general, I wouldn't worry about headshots with the MP5, because you typically have to mix too many of them in order to reduce the number of shots to kill, so just aim for the torso. After that though, let's have a look at our rate of fire, which is quite solid at 800 rounds per minute, and what this means is our 3-shot time to kill potential up close is 150 milliseconds, which is ridiculously fast. This is one of the fastest killing full auto guns in the entire game up close. However, it does drop off in 75 millisecond increments all the way down to 450 milliseconds at really long ranges, and that is quite a slow time to kill for longer ranges. Next, let's have a look at our bullet velocity, which is very good for an SMG at 540 meters per second. This is much more along the lines of an assault rifle, so generally speaking, bullet velocity should never really be an issue for you with this gun. Then let's get into our ranges, and as we can see here, our 3-shot kill range isn't very good at about 9 meters. So you really want to keep yourself up close and personal for that best time to kill potential. But honestly, even in a 4-shot kill range with a 225 millisecond time to kill, that's still within the realm of being quite competitive. So I'd say that's really this gun's most effective ranges, would be from 0 to about 16 meters. But then beyond that, the 5-shot kill range extends out to about 23 meters, and then the 6-shot kill range will extend out to about 36 meters, and anything beyond that will be a 7-shot kill. As for hipfire, no surprises here, it's just standard for an SMG, and then let's get into our idle sway, and there's definitely some sway with this gun, but with it being an SMG, you're typically not using this at extremely long ranges anyway, so generally speaking, idle sway shouldn't be a big issue for you with the MP5. As for our recoil, as we can see here, it doesn't have a ton of recoil by any means. It kicks upward with a slight lean to the right after the initial shots fired. It's also worth noting there is a pretty big jump between the first and second shot, and that happens quite consistently. So that's a big thing to be aware of with this gun, but overall, I do consider this to be at least reasonably accurate and controllable, and I actually feel fairly comfortable even stretching out my gunfights beyond the typical ranges that you would think for an SMG. After that though, let's move into our handling stats, and our aim down sight time is great at 200 milliseconds, so this is a very fast and snappy gun. Our sprint out time is standard for SMGs, and this is excellent at 110 milliseconds. And then, unfortunately, our reload add time is a bit on the slower side at 1.87 seconds, so you really have to be aware of that while playing with this gun. You need to leave that little bit of extra time to get a reload in. But then finally, for our base stats, let's get into our mobility stats. And when it comes to our base movement speed, this is noticeably above average at 4.9 meters per second. Our sprint speed is unfortunately a little bit below average for an SMG, but then again, it is an SMG, it still sprints pretty quickly around the map. And then finally, our aim walking movement speed is the best in the SMG category at 3.35 meters per second. Although I should mention, it's not like a significant outlier by any means. It's really only a little bit above the average for SMGs, because there's not a whole lot of variance here when it comes to this category of weapons. And with that, that finally wraps it up for the base stats of the gun. Now let's get into the barrel attachments to see how they impact the Lachmann Sub. And we'll start this off with our ranges, and as we can see, that first barrel, the 12-inch barrel, will increase our damage ranges by about 16%, so that is a nice boost, whereas the Lachmann Pulsar barrel will be reducing our ranges by 10%. And then the final barrel doesn't have any impact on our ranges at all. Next for barrels, let's have a look at how they impact our recoil. And as we can see here, once again with that 12-inch barrel, we're seeing a nice improvement. Not only is the total vertical magnitude noticeably lower than the base recoil, there's also a lot less horizontal deviation from the recoil path, which is nice to see. Whereas with the Lachmann Pulsar barrel, this one, we see some inconsistency here, and I would say this is a little bit worse than the base recoil, but still very manageable. And then finally, with the Falcon barrel, this one definitely seems to have a lot more side-to-side bounce and deviation from that recoil path. And then finally, for the barrel attachments, let's have a look at how they impact our aim down sight speeds. And unfortunately for that 12-inch barrel, things were looking so good with the range and the recoil, but it adds quite a bit of aim down sight time at 280 milliseconds. So that may make you second guess this barrel now. Then with the Lachmann Pulsar barrel, this one gives us a slight improvement to our aim down sight speed at about 190 milliseconds. And then finally, for the Falcon barrel, this one states that it improves our aim down sight speed, but at least with hand testing, I can't detect any difference whatsoever between the base and this barrel. So I don't doubt that there is a slight improvement to our aim down sight speed here. It's just not really measurable with hand testing, and therefore I do consider it to be negligible. Now, normally we jump into our class setups here, but I've had a lot of requests for me to cover aim down sight speeds for the magazine attachments. And while I can't afford to add a bunch of extra testing for this series simply because each episode is so time consuming to make already, I decided from now on I can at least just show you the aim down sight speeds. I'm not going to get into the other stats though. This is just to give you a little bit more information. And with this, the 15 round magazine gives us a noticeably faster aim down sight speed. The 40 round magazine adds about 30 milliseconds to our aim down sight time, so that may be reasonable for you depending on the class setup. And then the 50 round drum adds 65 milliseconds to our aim down sight speed, so you probably don't want that unless you're willing to have a very slow aim down sight time. And with that, we can finally move into some excellent attachment combinations I've got for you guys, and we're going to start this off with my favorite sort of setup. This is my all-around Lachmann Sub setup. And with this, just like a lot of my SMG setups, less is more. The more attachments you put on, the more you're hurting your aim down sight speed, and we really don't want to lose the benefits of using an SMG, which is having that really snappy aim down sight speed. So I kept it fairly minimal here. We've got the Bruin Pendulum muzzle. This one just seemed to help the most with this particular style of recoil on this gun. We've got the Phase 3 grip to help with that side-to-side bounce, and we're using the VLK Laser 7 milliwatt, which is going to help us with our aiming stability, aim down sight speed, as well as sprint out speed. That keeps the aim down sight time very reasonable for an SMG at 235 milliseconds. You can see the new recoil is very noticeably better than the base recoil, so that makes this gun quite accurate. And that's why I really like this particular setup. I'm not hurting the gun in too many ways. Now, I did want to point out you can make some modifications to this to better suit what you're going. So if you wanted to get a lot more accurate and you don't really care too much about aim down sight speed, I'd recommend putting that 12-inch barrel on there. That'll help a good amount with your recoil, but it'll really hurt your aim down sight speed. Or if you wanted to put like a 40-round magazine on, feel free to go ahead. Just keep in mind, again, your aim down sight speed will be noticeably slower, and you'll lose that versatility of this being an SMG. So there we go, that's my first build, and the one that I would tend to lean toward the most if I'm looking for my optimal performance. Now let's move into more of a niche build, and this is my Hipfire build. And with this, we're using that Lachmann Pulsar barrel, the VX Pineapple underbarrel, 9mm hollow points to potentially cripple enemy players if you shoot them in the legs, which is going to happen often with you hip firing. So that ammo type's just really well suited to a Hipfire build. And then we've also got the Point G3P laser. This one is visible from the hip, so you have to be aware of that with your gameplay, but it really massively improves our hipfire spread. And then finally, we've got the no stock attachment on there. And with this, our aim down sight speed is the same as the base at 200 milliseconds. Our sprint out speed is noticeably better than the base at just 88 milliseconds, so this sprints out very, very quickly, and that's great to see. Our sprint speed is noticeably faster than the base sprint speed, so you can get around the map a lot quicker and close those distances a lot better, which you have to do with a Hipfire build. And our hipfire diameter is improved by 30%, which is a very, very nice improvement considering this already has decent hipfire by default. And the only really big downside to this is our recoil sucks. You don't want to be using this gun at range. I'm not saying never aim down sight with it or anything, like still try to get aim down sight for like a mid-range fight where it's outside of your hipfire potential, but I'd never recommend trying to challenge somebody across the map with a setup like this. And with that, that's going to wrap it up today's gun guide on the Lachmann Sub. As for my thoughts on this gun, I think I said it toward the beginning, this is one of my favorite guns to use in the entire game. I absolutely love it. It's super versatile, has an amazing time to kill potential up close, and while it doesn't have the best range or recoil, both of those are quite manageable, and it's just a really good all-around SMG in this game. Now, of course, that is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about the Lachmann Sub in the comments down below. And also, if you guys have missed any of the previous gun guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.